get into the why we all came here tonight. So all of this work is being funded by SARE tonight. So I do a lot of beekeeping education. Um, if you ever hear me talk about the Iowa Farmers Union, they are my fiscal agent. They are the reason that I'm able to use the funds for the partnership grant that we got from the USDA. The Farmers Union has cooperation, education, and legislation as its core tenets, and they've really showed me how to be partners with USDA and IDOLs rather than be opposition to them. So this is a little bit here on the screen of what I do. My work involves teaching. It involves some education overseas, and I like to do small groups. Small groups are kind of my jam. That's why I like doing things like we have tonight. Um, we've also done, let's see, what else have I done? Um, Queen rearing. We've done wet grafting. Um, I've done some cutouts, um, all kinds of fun stuff. You know, not anything too crazy. Because I think there's plenty of beekeeping and animal husbandry stuff available. There's just not a lot of business stuff. That's why I have Mike here with us. I'm going to stop sharing here. I just want to make sure everyone has email addresses, which I will put in the chat here in a second. But I just want to make sure you see these are our email addresses. I think I've got a pretty good list of notes here from everybody's introduction. Mike, if I could have you go ahead and you can start sharing your screen and introduce yourself and then start your presentation. I think we've got a pretty good baseline understanding here of what our audience is wanting.
Great. Thank you, Julia. I'm going to bring mine up here now. If everybody can see that.
Perfect.
Great. Um, as Julia said, my name is Mike Smith. I work for the Iowa Center for Economic Success, which is a nonprofit organization located here in Des Moines. And our primary reason for existence really is just helping small business owners um, succeed. And that's why we're here. And my principal business is I work primarily with small businesses on taxes. So it was really exciting. I don't raise bees. I don't have any bees. I don't make honey. I do buy it at the store. So I'm sort of the outsider here, but hopefully I can help you with some of the tax implications associated with beekeeping and answer some of your questions along that line. Let's see. Okay. This is just going over a little bit of our mission, as I stated, and I'm here really to provide education, management tools, advice, tax services, and strategic planning to all the small businesses. But today it's for beekeepers. So what am I planning on talking about today? I'm really going to try and answer the question of whether or not your beekeeping is a hobby or is it a business? And based upon, I think it was Lori's question, is whether I'm a sole proprietor or an LLC or something along that line. I'll try to answer that. And if I don't, hit me and I'll go from there. And then if your beekeeping is actually a business, how do you file your taxes? And when you file taxes, do you file it as a sole proprietor or do you file it sole proprietor slash small business or do you file it as a farm? And that's a big difference because when you file your taxes as a sole proprietor or a small business, use what's called a Schedule C. And if you're a farm, you're a Schedule F. There's not a whole lot of difference in the records you collect or the information you provide. But I want to talk about those differences. Then everybody wants to know, how can I reduce my tax burden? None of us want to pay taxes, but unfortunately, we do. And so there are ways that we can reduce those taxes along that line. I want to talk a little bit about the filing deadlines that you have to meet this year for filing your taxes, and then really come in and just say, is there something the Iowa Center can do to help you, not only on your taxes, but on your business as well, because we offer an awful lot of classes through virtual means just like this that can help you with your business.
Okay, and I want to
So,
pop in really quick, Mike.
yeah, Julia.
So to Madison's question, or she didn't really pose it as a question, but I want to pose it for her. Madison is not beekeeping yet. One of the questions that I think needs to be answered is, can I take deductions before I'm actually in business?
And we'll discuss that come up in the next slide, really the hobby.
Okay.
If you're actually starting the business, even though you don't have sales, you can have expenses that you incur for setting the business up. But if you're not planning on doing the business for 5 years, you're just sort of looking at it and doing things along that line, I'd say now you really can't file yet. It has to do with whether or not the business is a going concern. Now, that doesn't mean it has to be a sole proprietorship, or I mean, it doesn't mean it has to be an LLC. So I'll go ahead and address that question if I can right now, just to sort of put it off the table. As a small business, all the income and expenses that come in are yours. And so you file a normal 1040 and you merely attach a Schedule C or an F to identify the business income and expenses. The LLC aspect of this is sort of a legal term. You don't have to have an LLC to be a business. You can be a business without an LLC, but the LLC provides you some legal protection, meaning that if something goes wrong and somebody sues you for something, all of your personal assets are protected, and only the assets that belong to the business are liable as part of that suit. So that's the big thing I wanted to answer is there's no difference between a sole proprietorship and an LLC from a tax perspective. There's only a difference from a legal protection perspective. Now, I'm not a lawyer and I talk mainly about the tax aspects, but if I were a lawyer, I'd tell you if you're going to have a going concern, I would go ahead and make the investment and turn it into an LLC just to have protect your personal assets along that line. Did that answer the question, Julia?
Yes, I think that's perfect. Thank you.
Great, thank you. So now, beekeeping, is it a hobby or is it a business? And this is something we have to understand because if it's a hobby, we don't file a tax for it. We just include any income we have associated with the sales of that as income on our 1040. The bad part of doing this as a hobby is you can't claim any expenses as a deduction. But really, let's sort of define what a hobby is. In general, businesses operate to make a profit, while your hobbies are for pleasure or recreation. Now, that doesn't mean your business can't be for pleasure, because if you're doing beekeeping, you obviously enjoy it. But if your primary reason for doing this is not to make money, but just to enjoy what you're doing, it's probably more of a hobby than it is a business. Income from a hobby must be reported on your 1040 as other income. So if you're just sort of making some honey in your backyard and you're selling it to neighbors, that income does need to be reported on your 1040. And as I mentioned, you can't claim the expenses related to a hobby as a deductible expense, which is sort of the bad part, if you will. If it's a hobby, the nice thing is you don't have to pay self-employment taxes as you would with a business. Now, I don't want to assume that you know what the self-employment tax is, but I also don't want to insult you if you do. But generally, the self-employment tax is your Social Security and your Medicare taxes that you pay. If you have a W-2 job and you get your paid stub every week or 2 weeks or once a month, you'll know that there's some deductions in there for Medicare and Social Security. That is half, or about 7.6% of the self-employment tax. Your employer is paying that other half. As a small business, you are now the employer, so you pay the entire amount your 7.6%, plus the employer's 7.6%, so 15.3%. And so as you file your taxes, you're going to have to be paying that self-employment tax if you're not already making quarterly payments during the year. So beekeeping as a business, if your intent is to make a profit, then you are a business. Do you depend on the income for your livelihood, or do you use that income? Then you are a business. If the activity is carried out like a business, you keep books and you're doing sales and you have inventory and you have assets, then it's a business. And if it's a business, you not only have to pay the income tax on that business and file a Schedule to C or F, then you need to pay self-employment taxes, which would equal 15.3% of your revenue. Keep that in mind because half of that now can be claimed as a deductible expense, but the other half is a tax you have to pay. Now, if I'm a business and not a hobby, how do I file? And there's really two trains of thought here. One is you file a Schedule C as a profit or loss from business as a small business, or you file a Schedule F as a profit or loss from farming. I'm not familiar with all of your activities out there. So in most cases, beekeeping, at least in the state of Iowa and throughout the country, is treated as farming or an agricultural business. Beekeeping is classified as an agricultural practice both by the National Beekeeping Association and the Department of Environment, Forestry, and Fisheries and the Department of Agriculture here in Iowa. So if beekeeping is your primary business, then you should generally be filing a Schedule F as a farming agricultural business. And there may be some benefit associated with being a farm, but not necessarily from an income tax perspective. But if you claim your property and check with your county auditor and get it classified as agricultural, there would be certainly some property tax aspects to that. If you're really just sort of a small business, you're working out of your backyard or something like that, and you don't want to claim your property as agricultural, I would suggest you file as a Schedule C, small business or sole proprietorship. There's really no difference from a tax perspective between the Schedule F or the C. It's just, are you a farm or you're not a farm? In most cases, beekeeping and the associated functions of honey production would be considered a farming operation, but you can still claim it on a Schedule C as a small business. Because if you're merely collecting and producing, you're generally considered a sole proprietorship. And from an income tax perspective, there's little difference between a Schedule C or an F. So what are some legitimate expenses you can claim to reduce your income tax liability? And these same types of expenses would go on a Schedule C or a Schedule F. Just filling it out is pretty much exactly the same. If you were to look at the two forms, they look almost exactly the same. So you can claim your beekeeping supplies. These would be any supplies needed to keep your colonies alive and flourishing. You can depreciate your equipment and your facilities. So this would be your hives, any of your safety equipment that you want to depreciate over time. You can deduct equipment repairs, and that would be maintenance and repair costs associated with keeping all of your equipment operational and your facilities. Packaging and shipping, which would include things like bubble mailers, your boxes, tissue paper, your beekeeping equipment such as extractors, smokers, your packaging supplies such as bottles, cans, your continuing education. If you're going to classes and you're paying for those classes to enhance your skills, if you're getting a license, then that would be that as well. All your safety equipment such as goggles, gloves, and masks. And you can have other costs such as mileage, driving to farm shows, driving to a farmer's market to do sales, driving to a class, driving to pick up supplies or equipment, that mileage is a deductible expense. And this year in 2020, doing our 2025 taxes, that mileage expense equates to 70 cents a mile, which can work out as a pretty hefty deduction. Home office use. This, if you have an area in your home that you dedicate to the office, you can deduct prorate all of your home expenses based upon that. If your home office is 10% of the square footage of your house, then you can deduct your utility costs, you can deduct your insurance, you can deduct your mortgage interest, all of those things as the legitimate expense. Your phone, what percentage of your phone you use for the business, you can deduct that percentage of the phone as expense. Any insurance you have, if you pay for labor, whether it be contract labor or hired labor, and any property taxes you pay, as well as sales tax that you may be paying on the goods that you sell. The big part is keeping good records. Oh, sorry about that. Went the wrong way. Boy, my finger's not working. I apologize. Okay. So this is sort of the survival guide. How do you survive tax season? Everybody sort of gets to this time of the year and says, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? And the big thing is that I always tell, gather your documents. It would be nice if you gathered them all year long and didn't wait until January, February, March, or April to gather them, but gather them together, review your profit and loss. If you've been making estimated tax payments during the year, confirm those with the IRS through your websites. Don't forget any year-end deductions you may have, and use the right and the same accounts all year long, and know your deadlines. And that's what I'll get into next. These are the deadlines for this year. It's 2025 tax season, but 2026. So by the end of January, if you have employees or non-contract employees that you work with, you need to issue them either a W-2 or a 1099 NEC showing what you paid them during the year and any taxes that you might have taken out. By February 20th, payers need to issue Form 29 1099s to individuals. By March 16th, if any of you are partnerships, you have to complete Form 1065 and issue K-1s to all your partners. By April 15th of this year, you need to submit your Form 1040s and either your Schedule C or F. If you can't do it at time, you don't have all your information, you need to submit your extension request by that date and then make any IRA or HSA contributions as a deduction by that date. Now, I'll just sort of close. As I told Julia at the beginning, I sort of like to just go through this quickly and then just try and address any questions people. I enjoy that more because I don't know what you want to know. You know what you want to know, and I'd rather just answer your questions. But just if you are interested in working with the Iowa Center, some of the business tools we have are tax organizers, templates, mileage logs, depreciation schedules, things like that. Education, I would see we offer education not only on taxes, but on all types of businesses, how to do financial statements, how to do business plans, how to set up your business. We offer loans to small businesses to make their business succeed. We do the tax preparation submission, and that includes both state and local. And we do Illinois just as well as Iowa. So for the out-of-state folks, we would appreciate that as well. And then as part of that, we provide your quarterly payment schedules for the coming year, any tax advice you might need, and strategic planning. After we finish your taxes, we'll sit down and give you some ideas on how you can decrease that overall tax burden. Okay. Oh, and that's about it. So now, if it's okay with you, Julia, I'd just like to open it up and see if anybody has any questions that they may have that they'd like me to address.
Yeah, perfect. So I put the website in the chat box for everybody if you want to take a look at those resources that Mike mentioned. Um, I did want to go to kind of Amy's question. Would she have an education business separate from a honey production business?
Yeah,
Or could you put
and
them together?
yes
Yep.
and no. Okay. Everything will be submitted on your personal 1040, which you're familiar with. But if, since you have two different businesses, you do one of two things. You either
Thanks
fire
for the chat box.
two Schedule Cs, one for the beekeeping and one for the education business, or you'd file a Schedule C for the education business or a Schedule F for the beekeeping part of the business. And both of those schedules, the income and expenses would then flow to your 1040 and either give you more income to pay taxes on, or it could help reduce your overall income if one of those businesses has a loss. Did that help, Amy?
Well,
Well, I
oh, go ahead.
currently I currently do a lot of education because I get called to do speaking um things and both at a just for different purposes. So I'm already doing that, but a lot of times I don't get paid for it. But I do a beekeeping class at a local community college. And
So
that
you would
income,
deduct those
they give
miles,
me a
right?
W-2 for that.
Well,
What's
let me
that?
ask do you get paid for the teaching or you don't get paid?
I get paid. Yes, I do for some of it, but some of it I don't.
Okay, so for that you don't get paid for, that's volunteer. Thank you very much for that. From a tax perspective, it doesn't help you. For that which you do get paid, then you would claim that income and any expenses associated with that income, like driving to the college to give the class. And if you document those miles, then you get a deduction of 70 cents a mile. For buying any books or supplies or materials that you need to teach the class or to educate yourself to make you a better teacher for the class. Now,
Okay, so like I'm
this
going
is
to a
okay.
beekeeping conference and potentially I could use that as write that off as an expense for my education to be a better educator.
That would be correct. And you could claim that, excuse me, you could claim that if you've got a beekeeping business and you're going to the conference to improve your beekeeping business, or if you're going to the conference to increase your education and teaching, then you would assign that expense to the appropriate area. It may be a little bit of both. Just go ahead and assign it to one or the other.
Okay, so if I'm understanding correctly, it would be all under the umbrella of one LLC. And I got kicked off before I came back on just as you were talking about LLC versus the sole proprietorship.
Right. Okay, there is no difference between a sole proprietorship and an LLC from a tax perspective. None. A sole proprietorship is a small business. An LLC is a limited liability company, which what that does is protect you legally in case somebody sues you. As a limited liability company, the only thing that's liable as part of payment for the suit would be the assets owned by that company. If you don't have that and you get sued, all your personal assets could be taken to pay off any suit.
Okay. Yeah. And then you were saying, so everything is under one LLC, but then I would file different schedule depending on the purpose of or the source of the income. For example, if it's from education, it would be under one Schedule C, and then if it was from honey sales or bee or wax sales, it would be from another a different Schedule C. Is that?
Well, and you could do, and I apologize, it's getting a little more complicated now. You could actually, if you're going to make sort of an umbrella LLC that covers both businesses, then you could just file it as one Schedule C or one Schedule F. If you're going to have sort of two separate businesses, then you would file it as either a Schedule C, a separate Schedule C, separate Schedule F.
Okay.
Sounds to me like you're sort of designing an umbrella LLC to cover multiple types of businesses, which you can do. Just make sure that when you form the LLC, you define it that way.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
You bet. I like
And Mike,
answering questions.
we've got a question here about donations. So if I'm a producer and I'm donating honey, wax products, other products of the hive to a nonprofit, is that a deduction
No,
from my business?
you get a nice thank you, but charitable contributions in kind, you can claim that as a deduction if you itemize your deductions, but you can't claim it as an expense for your business. And as most of us know these days, after it's been 8, 9 years now that we've been under the higher standard deduction level, most of us don't get enough charitable contributions to be able to take itemized deductions. I will say this year, 2026, that so when you're filing next April of 2027, if you give $2,000 or more in cash donations, I'm sorry, up to $2,000 in cash donations to a nonprofit, you will be able to claim that as a charitable contribution, even if you don't itemize. But that will be, it's not in kind. So giving out honey, no, it would have to be cash.
Okay, so we got a question coming in. Where does the equipment that I purchased over the years fall into a new LLC? Do I have the LLC purchase it from me as the person, and then that's a business expense? And how does like depreciation and all that factor in?
Yeah, the best way to do that is let's assume you've had this equipment for years and now you've decided to go into business. You're stopping the hobby part and going to business, which is where I think the question was from. What you would do is at the time you start the business is determine what is the actual value of that piece of equipment. And you could just use market value. What do you think you would pay for that equipment in that age, how long it's been in practice and everything? What do you think you would pay for it? And then that would be the equipment expense for your new business. So you don't have
You need a
to
formal
sell it to yourself.
transaction at the bank.
No formal transaction. Just sort of
Okay.
make yourself a note in your book saying, I've transferred $500 worth of equipment and I used local market to determine what that value was to my business, and therefore it's now an expense to your business.
Okay. So I guess part of this also falls into, so I've created this LLC to try and transition this into a business. I can turn on my mic here too. So and disregard the background noise. I got 3 little kids that are running around like elephants. But so I've created this LLC and I still, like, for example, purchased, like this year I purchased an extractor, but I didn't have my LLC. I had my LLC set up, but I didn't have my bank account set up. And I didn't have basically money in the bank to pay for that equipment. So I just purchased it myself with plans that the LLC would eventually purchase that back from myself. I know that's probably not the right way to do it, but I'm trying to, like I said, now that I kind of have a lot of that different equipment and I don't have that much cash in my LLC at this point, just because I haven't had that many sales. I guess, how is that just something that I would expense over, like, say 2 or 3 years? I would say this expense was, it's a 3-year transition from personal to LLC, or is it just clear line in the stand. This year, I have a $8,000 loss because all this equipment that I've purchased now becomes part of the business, and this first year is just kind of a loss.
Yeah. This is going to be a hard concept, I hope, to understand, and I hope I can explain it well. You are the LLC. There is no you over here on the left and the LLC on the right. You are the LLC. So regardless on separate bank accounts or credit cards, even though you should have those, it doesn't matter. So if you're buying the equipment, the LLC is buying the equipment.
Okay.
Now, there's several ways to handle how you do that. You can claim the entire expense this year. Now, you may have more expense than you have money. That's called a net operating loss. You can carry that loss forward to future years to help you in future years when you are making money. The other way is if you buy a big piece of equipment, and I don't know what a big piece of equipment would be, but let's just say a tractor, which is tens of thousands of dollars, then you can either claim that all or you can depreciate that over a 10, 15, or 20-year period of time. Usually straight line is the best way. So if you pay $10,000 for the tractor and it's got a life of 10 years, then you claim a depreciation expense of $1,000 a year. But I think the big thing I want to get across is there's no difference between you and the LLC. It's all the money's yours and all the expenses are yours. It's just a question of where do you put them. And since you have the business, put all your expenses over on the business side because that's going to reduce your tax burden from there.
Okay. Yeah, and I know I've talked to a lot of other different business owners or people that have talked about setting up businesses like this. And a very common topic I've heard is keep business expenses within the business, personal expenses within your personal. And so, I mean, obviously starting the LLC part of the way through the year, creating a bank account part of the way through the year for that LLC is kind of makes it a little hairy, I think, for the first year. But I think, like I said, moving forward, that's my plan is to do that. But
Right.
I'm trying to understand how, like I said, how I transition those things from being quote unquote personal to now it's part of the business and the business needs to depreciate it or own it. So,
Right.
yeah,
So,
thank you.
yeah, you're doing exactly right. Set up those bank accounts and the credit cards, but don't lose an expense because you paid for it out of your personal checking account.
Okay. Thank you. I guess
Any other questions, Julia?
I'd say I get another question if nobody else has one. You had talked that, if we're trying to run it as a physical business, that the intention is to make a profit. And obviously that's my intention. Obviously I think most of the beekeepers probably in the room know that being profitable in beekeeping can be challenging. Is there, like I said, from it being a business, is there anything that says like if you're not profitable in 2 or 3 years or a year or two that you can't operate it as a business anymore? Obviously my plan is to become profitable, but at this point my expenses outweigh my income. So like I said, that's, I guess, I don't know if you have any insight on that.
Yeah, the general rule is the 3-year rule. If you go 3 years without making a profit, the IRS will question whether or not you're a hobby or a business.
Okay.
So, but that doesn't mean you have to shut down in 3 years. You can keep going as long as your intent is to make a profit.
Okay.
And it's just the IRS may come and ask you, are you still running this business or what? And you just say, yeah, I am. My intent is to make a profit and I'm still working on it.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Do you think it would help if I flashed the expenses part of a Schedule F or C to show everybody? I don't know if everyone's seen that. Would that be helpful?
I'd say, yeah, go ahead and show it. You've
Okay.
got the form up there, I guess, and you can show
Yeah,
that.
yeah, I've got the form here. I guess I could maybe share like um things. Can you see that? There we go. Let me increase the size here so you can see this.
Great.
So I guess I was thinking about the way you were talking, um, taking miles, taking a percentage of your phone, percentage of your maintenance for your vehicle, maybe storage space, because half of my garage is exclusively bee stuff, and related expenses like home insurance. Um, I don't know. That's some things that I've done throughout the years. I don't know how many people have seen. Do we have questions about the expenses that we're seeing here? So chemical treatments, association dues, trade magazines.
I think and this is one reason I sort of like the Schedule C versus the Schedule F, but unfortunately the beekeepers say use Schedule F. But because a lot of these expenses and the way they're broken out tie to a farm. So things like seed and fertilizer and all that stuff. Now, and my ignorance of beekeeping, I apologize, but you may be going out and buying seeds to plant in order to pollinate for your bees. So there may be seed costs in that. The Schedule C is a little clearer on defining the expenses for a small business. Advertising, that's pretty well, marketing and advertising, pretty well done. Any contract labor costs that you're paying, depreciation on your equipment, interest on business loans, not interest on your house, but interest on your business loan. Um, Vehicles, rents, all those types of things. Now, the Schedule F and the Schedule C work the same way. Could you take it down a little bit for me, Julia, so we can see the top of the Schedule C? Oh, other way? Yeah. So generally, this is just sort of the big thing. Um, it shows you that your name, the name of your, the type of business you have, the business name itself. The one thing I would do is go down to, if you'll see, there's a social security number code, and then there, box D there says employee ID number or EIN. The EIN is really the social security number for your business. You do not have to have an EIN to file your business income tax. You can use your social security number. I would strongly suggest that if you're going to have this business, you go and get an EIN. It's free. You go to irs.gov and you say, I want to get an EIN and what your business is, and they will issue you an EIN. The EIN is going to be needed if you want to open a business bank account, if you want to get a business credit card, if you have employees that you're paying. But the other thing is, it keeps anybody you're dealing with as a business from knowing what your social security number is, which, as has always been, is a very security related issue. So, like I say, it's free, it's simple. Go to irs.gov, say, I want an EIN, and it'll walk you right through the system. In a couple of days, you'll have an EIN on its way to you.
Yeah.
And
So
that's
if
the
we could
same
go
for the
back,
Schedule C or the F.
yep. If we could go back to this expense part, and we
Yeah.
look at Madison's question down in the chat. If we were to rent our bees to places like California orchards with mileage and a rental, either rent a car or their own car or Airbnb, would that be an expense that you could take out
Could
from
you
this
could you say
area?
that again, Julia? I missed part of that. I want to make sure I get it right.
Yep. So if you were going to take your bees out for pollination, could you take your mileage and rent or an Airbnb expense as a business expense? Could that be a deduction?
Yeah, I'm going to repeat that because it's part of the business itself that I don't always understand. So I'm assuming you've got your bees and you're taking them someplace to pollinate. And so
Yes.
you've got a mileage expense associated with that. So yes, you keep those mileage, and that's a mileage expense you can claim. So yes to that. If you're staying somewhere while that's going on, like an Airbnb or Verbo or hotel or campground or whatever, all that expense is yes. And then 50% of the meals you consume, pay for while you're in that travel status are also an expense. So did
Okay,
did
Madison.
that answer that?
Yep, Madison, why don't you come off mute and talk to Mike about that, and then we'll have Amy's question next.
Sorry, it's a little loud over here. That answered my question wonderfully. So thank you so much.
Great.
So, but
Thank
you
you,
also had this
Madison.
other question. Your other question here, if you
Oh,
have one EIN for one business, do you need a second EIN for the B business? Did I read that
yes.
right?
Yep.
Okay, and I sort of saw that pop up, and it sort of goes back to the conversation I think I had with either Amy or Lori is if if the businesses are similar and you're sort of combining them into a single business or single LLC, you only need to have one EIN. But if they're dissimilar, you're doing completely dissimilar jobs, you've got a real estate business over here and you're doing beekeeping, then you should have two EINs, one for each one. Or if you run a furniture store and then you've got beekeeping, then you need to have two EINs. So it really gets into, are they similar businesses that you can combine into one, or are they completely dissimilar?
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
You bet.
And Amy, you want to read your question? Maybe she can't.
Yeah,
Oh, there you
sorry.
are.
Yeah, I just wondered, you need an EIN to form an LLC, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and then is that created through an attorney or tax preparer?
There are any number of organizations out there that will help you form an LLC. You can do it yourself. All you have to do is work with the Secretary of State office here in Iowa or in Illinois, depending on where we're talking about. And there's generally a cost anywhere from $50 up. I would, it's hard for me to give suggestions because I end up pointing you in a direction that's I'm not supposed to do. But you don't need a lawyer to form an LLC. You can do that a lot cheaper yourself or working directly with the Secretary of State. But if you don't feel confident in doing it yourself, there's any number of organizations that can help you form an LLC.
It's in Illinois, so yeah, I wish we were in Iowa, but we live in Illinois.
Well, you can move. We'll take you.
And it's still the Secretary of State.
Yeah, it's still the
Yeah,
Secretary of State in Illinois. So
okay,
I don't know about the pricing. In Iowa, it's $50.
yeah.
okay, yeah. I don't know. It's probably more expensive in Illinois. That's how they like to run things here. So
Yeah, but Springfield's a beautiful town to visit if you want.
true, yeah.
My daughter worked there. She went to school in Chicago and then her first job was down there in Springfield. So
Okay. Okay, very good. Thank you.
you bet.
I have a question if if there's an opening here. So we've always run our business as a hobby. And the reason we did that is because when he first presented it to our tax preparer, he said, unless you think you're going to make money, don't even file. He said, don't even bother with it. And pretty much every year it's been pretty much a wash, our expenses to our income. So my question is it, if we make so much money, is there a maximum number of money that we need to make in order to file, or are we supposed to file if we make any money off of the business?
Laura, I think the best way to answer that question is with the question, which is, what is your intent? Is your intent with this to make it a business and to make a profit at some point in time? Or is your intent to just go through life breaking even?
Mhm.
If your intent is to go through life breaking even, then it's a hobby. The disadvantage to that is if your expenses exceed your income, you don't, it doesn't do you any good. You're just reporting the income and you can't report the expenses. So, but if you are incurring expenses that exceed your income, then there's an advantage to that because it's going to bring down your tax burden. But you can't sort of do that forever.
Sure.
So you're telling me your sort of intent is to break even, and I get that. The problem is that your break even is income to your family where you can't claim the expenses. So
Mhm.
from a tax perspective, you're not breaking income. You're not breaking even because you've got positive income and no expenses to offset it.
So if we want to do this as a business, we really need to file a Schedule F. A C is only.
Well, or Schedule C if you're just doing, if it's sort of small.
Mhm. And when you say sort of small, is there a income limit with a Schedule C versus a Schedule F?
No, and
Okay.
there's no income limit for either one. The only, excuse me, sorry about that. The only thing is that some people say, well, I made a loss, therefore I don't need to file.
Mhm.
And that's wrong. If you make a loss, not only do you need to file, yes, but you should file because it's going to bring down your taxes on your 1040 because that loss carries over and it's going to reduce your W-2 income from whatever other jobs you might have.
Mhm. Okay, good to know. Thank you.
Can I make an assumption? Just as it, can I assume that you're just not reporting the income because you say my income equaled my expenses, so I'm sort of ignoring it?
Yeah, and again, that was on the advice of our tax preparer. He just suggested if you're not going to make a lot of income, don't even bother with the expenses and the in the income. So we never have. But I'm telling you, well, especially this past year, we lost our hives. We lost our hives again this winter. So, and our income was terrible. So I'm thinking at this point, we probably should start claiming something income and expenses because we put so much money into packages of bees and really didn't get anything out of that.
Right. And I would agree with that 100%. I would respectfully disagree with your accountant by saying that even even if you in the past, if you were making income, that income should have been reported as income, and it wasn't. Even from a hobby, if all you're doing is making stuff at home, you're supposed to report that income. Most people don't because nobody knows you're making that income, but my job is to tell you what the law is, and so I gotta play the bad guy and tell you
Right.
that.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
You bet.
All right, we are at our hour. Do we have any other questions?
I guess I just one other quick question.
Yeah.
Schedule C versus Schedule F. I think maybe part of my long-term goal is to maybe take advantage of a beginning farmer loan. And I think you need a few years of positive income for on a Schedule F to qualify for a beginning farmer
Right.
loan.
That would be correct. And then if you want to if you want to have your land assessed as agricultural property, that's something you got to go to your county
Zoning.
auditor and look at that particular issue. And just as closing, I would just say, Julia shared my email and out there.
Mhm.
If anytime during the year you guys have a question, just get on the email and send it to me and I'll address it as quickly as I can.
Thank you.
Excellent. So I appreciate everybody who showed up tonight. Mike, thank you very much for your time. As you exit the meeting, you will have a 3-question poll. And then everybody who registered, whether you were here to attend or not, I will be sending a link once I get this all polished up and published onto YouTube. So I appreciate everybody very much. And I wish you a good evening. I guess I can maybe share my screen to have everyone as our farewell screenshot here. Um, if there's anything else that you all need, Mike's email is there. Everybody, you're going to be on my email list. And I look forward to staying in touch with everyone and watching everybody's progress. Mike, anything else we need to say?
No, I just thank you very much for letting me join in with you guys today. I think I probably learned more about beekeeping than I ever wanted to know. So
Oh, we know you want to know more. That's what we do
that's
best is
right.
talk about bees.
Okay. Thank you so
All
much.
right. Have a good night, everybody. Thank you.